Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Buyole, Account Director at APO Group, and alongside me is Valerie Njiaba, Communications Officer at Paradigm Initiative. So today, now I will hand over to Valerie to just tell you more about why we are here and why Paradigm is here to mark the close of Digital Rights Inclusion Forum 2022. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for being here. And Valerie, welcome and over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. Good morning, gentlemen of the press, and thanks for that introduction, Sandra. So we are here to officially mark the closing of DRIF22, that's the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, that started on the 12th of April this year. So we've had 39 days, today is the 39 days of activities towards digital rights and inclusion. So I'll give a rundown of the program and then we'll go right into it. We already welcomed our initiative, and of course we'll go to question and answer. After the question and answer, then we'll take a vote of thanks from the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative. So Sandra, we can go.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Valerie. I know you might be wondering why we are gathered here today. A lot to be discussed today, and during these discussions, we'll be having very thought-provoking debates on pertinent issues pertaining to the digital sphere in Africa. Among the issues will be data privacy, affordable internet, gender and ICTs, disability rights and ICT, health surveillance during COVID times, and obviously internet shutdowns. So during the entire period of DRIF forums, these discussions were held across Africa, and action plans to enhance the digital rights and inclusions in Africa, and also to collaborate on digital rights and inclusions were formulated. So I will now open the sessions by allowing Tobekile Matimbe, who is Paradigm's Initiative Community Manager and DRIF22 Coordinator, to give us a brief of what DRIF is all about. Welcome, Tobekile.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to just jump right in and just talk about the Rights and Inclusion Forum. And as already introduced, my name is Tobekile Matimbe. I'm a community manager at Paradigm Initiative. And yes, we have been coordinating DRIF together with the Paradigm Initiative team. And the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, you might be wondering what it is. It is essentially an important platform where conversations on digital policy in Africa are basically debated and partnerships are forged for action. It hosts a diverse range of stakeholders and capacities for enhancing digital rights and inclusion on the African continent as well as beyond. DRIF literally is Paradigm Initiative's flagship platform for communities of practice around a diverse range of thematic areas, including privacy, affordable internet, increasing women's access to digital tools and ICTs, health surveillance as well during COVID-19 times, downs, accessibility for persons with disabilities and similar themes. So DRIF generally has in the past attracted diverse members of civil society, the technical community, the academia, government and the private sector for shared engagements. And it has also set its tone as the arena for tough topical global issues around internet rights, especially in Africa, and consolidating the views of civil society, technology companies, the government, the academia, and other stakeholders. So this is our 9th edition. And what that means is that we've been doing this, I think, for 9 years. And we have literally been engaging in robust conversations and discussing how best we can shape the digital rights and inclusion landscape in Africa. So we started off on the 12th of April to the 14th of April online and had a number of sessions that we hosted, and we had different stakeholders across beyond hosting sessions, including our partners, Media Defense, as well as other stakeholders who joined in from the content. And we also had community voices joining as well from Zimbabwe, just to highlight 2 partners who were like hosting sessions, and other partners as well were part of this. And from then on, we started off with in-person sessions. And when we embarked on this journey with our partners, we embarked on a journey to host sessions in 17 countries. And we started off on the 20th of April, and here we are. Today is the 20th of May, and we are rounding off DRIF, but I must highlight that we still have one session that will happen on the 26th of May in Somalia, and it had to be postponed because of presidential elections that were ongoing in Somalia. So as much as we are concluding the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, we are cognizant of the fact that we still have one session that is coming. So we invite the community to continue to follow us on our pages and to continue to engage with what's going on the continent. I will also, just before I round off, just highlight the countries where we were doing this. So we had a session in Namibia. We had hosted together with Digital Foundation of Namibia. We had a session in Malawi, hosted as well with Youth and Society. We had a session in Zambia. We had a session in Angola, collaborating with Mwanapo. We also had a session in the DRC, collaborating with an organization called ICDH. We had a session in Central African Republic, hosted as well together with colleagues from ABCA. And we had a session in Cameroon, a session in Senegal, a session in South Sudan, collaborating with Koneta. And we had a session in Ethiopia, where we were collaborating with Zero. We had a session in Kenya yesterday, and it was very interesting. We also had this session here to interrogate the issues that are pertinent here in Kenya. We also had a session in Tanzania, hosted together with Zaina Foundation. We had a session in Nigeria, a session in Ghana, or rather 2 sessions in Ghana, where we were collaborating with ISO Ghana, as well as Inclusive Tech. And we also had a session in the Gambia, collaborating with Give One Project Gambia. And like I said, we will be collaborating with Digital Shelter on the 26th of May to host the Somalia event. So all in all, at this point, we have hosted 16 sessions in Africa, and we were interrogating critical issues that are of concern to those specific countries. So I'll end by just highlighting the objectives of the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum. You might be wondering, why are you doing this as Paradigm Initiative? Basically, we are doing this to create platforms for discussing key issues that are pertinent to digital rights and inclusion on the continent. We are also developing action plans for enhancing digital rights, and we are also increasing our networks and our collaborations on digital rights and inclusion in Africa. So for me, I know there's going to be a lot of things coming, but from the team at Paradigm Initiative, we want to fully appreciate our partners who have collaborated with us on this, and also to just say, you know what, we need a space that is enabling for digital rights and inclusion. We need a free space for people to be able to access internet freedom. And I think that will be all from me. Thank you.
Okay, Thanks so much, Tobekile, for giving a rundown of what DRIF22 is all about. And just like you all know, one of the major aspects that we are having on this program today, it's the launching of the Londa report. Londa, it's our annual Digital Rights and Inclusion in Africa report. And today we shall be officially launching the 2021 report. And to take us through the launching, I'll still call on Tobekile to, take us through, and of course, with the researchers, those that worked on this report from several other countries. Of course, we have from DRC, Malawi, and Tunisia, who are here to tell us a little bit more about how it went down in carrying those research in their respective countries. Thank you, Tobekile.
Thank you so much. And I'm super excited and happy to also announce that we are officially launching the State of Digital Rights and Inclusion in Africa report, titled Londa. And you might be wondering, what does Londa mean? And Londa means to defend. And it's a Zulu term that we felt that as a community, it was representative of, what comes out of this report and our main objective, which is to defend digital rights and inclusion in Africa. So that is what we want to unveil today. And for everybody watching, I'm just going to lift up the copy and say, this is the State of Digital Rights and Inclusion in Africa report. And it is not just Paradigm Initiative's flagship research output, but it basically is a community output because we collaborate with a number of key researchers across the African continent to basically capture what is going on in Africa when we're looking at digital rights and inclusion. So I think earlier on I was talking about the forum that interrogates key issues, and I think what Londa does basically is to cover the gaps and the developments in the landscape. So we just don't spotlight what has been going wrong in terms of digital rights and inclusion, but we also take time to also capture what is going well in the space and acknowledge which governments are doing fairly well than others. I'm sure if you read it, you'll see the trends, you'll be able to also assess how certain countries are doing and come to a conclusion when you go through that report. So we do this annually, and as I said, we monitor what's going on, and I've also highlighted to you why we've called it Londa. So effectively, this is an advocacy tool for engagement with different stakeholders. So beyond this production, we just don't file it and keep it in our offices or on our website, but the key focus is for us to be able to then meaningfully engage with the relevant stakeholders that are outlined in the recommendations that come out of this report. So beyond that as well, like I mentioned, we acknowledge as well those positive developments, and we call for digital rights and inclusion protection in Africa, basically. How we've done this, like I mentioned earlier, we've done this collaborating with a number of researchers across the continent. So for this year, we've captured 22 countries in this report. And I'll just highlight the countries for you as well. We are covering Angola, we are covering Ethiopia, we are covering Nigeria, we are covering Tanzania, we are also covering Uganda, we are covering Zambia, Malawi, Kenya, Rwanda, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, the Gambia, Namibia, Botswana, Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Togo, Benin, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Tunisia, and Senegal. So those are the countries that are covered in this report. And today we are honored as well to have 3 researchers who have also contributed to this publication. And I would love for them to, I think, take a moment as well to just kind of cover a bit of their findings so that we kind of see some of the critical issues that are arising in these countries, and to just, put out a teaser out there to say, okay, this is what is covered within the report. And we have Charles Kajoloweka from Malawi, who drafted the Malawi report. We also have Yoshua Uwini from Tunisia, and we have Providence Baraka as well from the DRC. So I'll hand over to you, and please feel free to ask these authors to kind of like give a briefing as well in terms of what is captured in the report. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yusuf Shwini. I'm a digital rights researcher, and I had the chance to collaborate with the Paradigm Initiative team to work on the Tunisia Report for 2021. So for context, 2021 was not a simple or calm year in Tunisia because one, it commemorates a decade after the Tunisian Revolution, which started in 2010 and late 2010 and 2011. And it was a milestone for Tunisians to actually assess what happened in the last decade. But we also afterwards had other events that were super interesting to observe as well. So in the report this time, we chose to focus on two pillars. The first one was the freedom of expression, because we can't ignore or in a way say we are not aware of the development when it comes to freedom of expression, because it also translates what goes offline, but also can sometimes be the trigger for other social changes. And the second pillar was the access to information right. So as much as sometimes we try to focus or have certain events happening in a certain category when it comes to digital rights, it's super important to actually also know that they are super correlated. And context is key sometimes, or always actually context is key. So in the case of Tunisia, we went on to cover the news when it comes to freedom of expression, the rise of arrests, etc., but also in the second section of the report, the country report, we focused on access to information, not only when it comes to the decrees, the laws, let's say the legal framework, but what's actually in practice, what's happening in practice. And by the end, we chose actually to focus on the recommendations. We kept it short, but I think very precise, what could be done now to actually leverage and protect digital rights in Tunisia. You can find those recommendations in the report, but briefly they are: one, to in a way review and update the legal framework to protect the digital rights, but also to work together as in a multi-stakeholder approach to actually also leverage the practices and also work on what's in reality, what's going on, how we are implementing those laws. So these are pretty much the update when it comes to the Tunisian report for 2021. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. As I was introduced, my name is Charles Kajureka. I work for Youth and Society in Malawi. We're a partner over the Parley Initiative and the 2021 also the Londa report. Quickly, maybe just to share about the findings on Malawi. So the major finding was around the low penetration of ICT in the country. So we still have very low penetration of ICT. For example, if you look at internet penetration, we are still around 14.6%. out of around 20 million people. So that really signifies the exclusion when it comes to the internet access. Even in terms of network coverage, for example, you have about 4.1 million Malawians that are not connected to any telecommunication. So this again speaks to the exclusion of the rural masses, where people don't have access to the internet, they don't have access to telecommunication network. And also this also largely speaks to the inequalities and the levels of poverty, as major drivers of this exclusion. You may also wish to know that a taxation or toxic taxation by government when it comes to internet services, mobile services, are some of the drivers of exclusion, because government is really imposing a lot of taxes, and that again is increasing the cost of internet and mobile services. These are some of the key highlights. And the one major again highlight I can talk about is the weak infrastructure in the country that is also limiting access to mobile and internet services, as it were. We also observed growing crackdown of decent media activists, ordinary citizens online. And just for the last, just in 2021, we had over 10 people who were arrested for expressing themselves online. And that really is, a worrying pattern. And when you look at the Freedom House report of 2021, it also, shows that Malawi declined in terms of internet freedom because of the arrest of individuals, particularly those that hold different views of that from those of government. So the growing crackdown on dissent is really another area of concern that we must pay attention to. There are growing cases of surveillance, state surveillance, where the state is intercepting private conversations and people are being arrested for that. We also noted that gaps in terms of the law and policy. So, for example, Malawi does not have the personal data protection law, and that again, has rendered a lot of citizens vulnerable, particularly with the private sector really harvesting data, and then there's no law to protect such personal data. So the legal and policy gaps again that were identified are areas of concern. What are some of the gains and some of the positives that we also highlighted? For example, the Malawi has developed what is called the digital economy strategy. So as a robust response to the deficits that we have in our ICT sector. So this strategy, for example, is aimed at increasing access to internet from 14.6% to around 80% for the next 5 years. So it runs from 2021 to 2026. It also intends to increase, for example, the device ownership from 51% to 80%. So these are some of the highlights in terms of the positives that we have seen. And we also, in conclusion, it's so important to highlight that while the majority of people are excluded from having these mobile and internet services, there are specific groups that are affected much more. So persons with disabilities, women, and some of the marginalized groups that are facing the brunt of this exclusion, including the rural poor. Because again, you see this digital divide between the urban and the rural masses. So in short, these are some of the highlights I can share. We have very specific recommendations that you're going to have access to through the report. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Providence Baraka from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, a French-speaking country. So for that, I would like to apologize for my French, for my English, as well as my accent, which may not seem very good. So Congo is a country, the Central Africa region, with more than 90.9 million population and internet rate penetration of 23.2% at the first quarter of 2021, according to the data reporter website, and with 4 mobile phones network and main internet service providers. So if you have been reading reports coming from DR Congo from DR Congo many years ago, 18 years ago now, you should notice that the ICT sector was regulated by a controversial and an outdated law framework, the law number 013/2022 of 16 October 2002. And according to the Congolese legislator, this framework law was not really adapted to deal with the emerging questions in the ICT sector, but also the law was not really covering accordingly some imperative questions like the national security, that you have to be careful, but also the data protection of internet users, the regulation of the telecom market. And I don't know if it's really true. We need to fact check this. And I read somewhere, they said many countries that use the term Democratic Republic in their official names, like Algeria, North Korea, Democratic Republic of Congo, are always considered as undemocratic, with hybrid regimes, with authoritarian regimes by the Economist Intelligence Unite Democracy Index. So I don't know if it's true. We need to fact check this. And why does this relate to the DRC's context? Because many reports published in the past 10 years in the context of human rights and internet freedom are presenting the DRC as a country where human rights and internet freedom violations are very common, and they have had serious repercussions on the democracy itself, right? And as you may read in the reports, the Londa reports, you will notice that the Article 46 of the former law framework was giving power to the government to violate freedom of expression on behalf of the national security. Yes, and we noticed internet shutdowns, arrests of journalists and civil society actors that were against the former regime, that the former regime was considering as dangerous, right? And yes, for the freedom of expression in DRC, the freedom of expression in DRC is a right, is guaranteed by the mother law. It's Article 23, 24, and 25. Yes. And to understand the question related to the human rights, the freedom of expression in DR Congo, should consider these aspects: the passing of power from Joseph Kabila, the former president, to Felix Tshisekedi, the actual president, the end of their political coalition, but also the elections that are coming the next year. So those are elements that can help anyone to understand how the freedom of expression is evolving in the country. And for instance, in 2021, the organization Reporters Sans Frontières, an organization fighting for the freedom of information around the world, established an alarming situation when it comes to press freedom in the country. Our country, my country, the DRC, was ranked 149th out of 280 countries and territories around the world. And yes, since May 2021, and some regions of DRC have been placed under a special regime due to the worsening violence committed against the civilian population. And you may understand that this is a special regime, and the civil authorities have been replaced by military authorities. And several human rights actors in DRC have expressed their fear that the state of siege, the special regime, could open doors to human rights violations by restricting freedom of expression, information, and association. And for instance, on August 2021, through a campaign called A Candle for Press Freedom in North Kivu province, the Corporation of Journalists called the authorities to guarantee journalists a free and independent press. And it was for them a moment to pay tribute to their colleagues who have been killed in cowardly fashion during the state of siege in the province of North Kivu and Ituri, and whose investigation have remained silent until now. And in the report, different stakeholders that have been interviewed have did these recommendations. For the government, for instance, with regard to the new law framework, number 20/017 of November 25, 2022, on ICT is provided for on the proposal of the regulatory authorities in order to provide an order of the minister having the telecommunication and ICT sectors in its attribution to set conditions and terms for the collection, recording, processing, storage, and transmission of personal data, to the parliament to pursue and complete legislative and structural reforms in the press and communication sectors by obtaining the adoption and promulgation of the law on access to information in DRC, but also by initiating the revision of law number 96/002 of June 22, 1996, setting the modalities for the exercise of freedom of press, as well as anticipating the decriminalization, yes, my English, of press offenses. And for the civil society organizations, yes.
Hello.
And to the civil society organizations to raise awareness, and but also to consolidate joint actions in multi-stakeholders meetings such as internet governance forums in order to improve or develop different consultation frameworks for the benefit of the digital ecosystem in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Also to telecom companies, they have been urged to respect the law and international standards to protect private communications and personal data of of their users, but also to not consent to illegal requests from the government when it comes to personal data and personal data of users. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing those perspectives. So I'll just also conclude by saying that the Londa report will be available soon after this press release, and also look forward to the French and Swahili versions within the coming 10 days. So this will be all from me.
So I will hand over to Valerie.
Okay, thanks so much, Sandra. Okay, so the next agenda item is giving a rundown of our in-person sessions, DRIF in-person sessions. But before talking about that, I think it's important to note that the event started with a 3-day virtual session from April 12 to 14, and later on moved into physical country sessions. I think initially we were to have 17 countries, and Tobekile talked about why we postponed the Somali session. So yes, so the country sessions brought together over 600 participants in an engaging sessions where they dissect the state of digital rights and inclusion in Namibia, Zimbabwe, DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia, Angola, the Gambia, Malawi, Cameroon, South Sudan, Tanzania, Senegal, Central African Republic, Ethiopia, and Kenya, under the global theme towards a digitally inclusive and rights respecting Africa. So we had 13 virtual sessions with over 390 participants. And our virtual sessions were hosted by our partners, Rural Tech Solution, Youth Hub Africa, Human Rights Journalist Network, Bo News Service, Media Defense, Usmanu Danfodio University, Sokoto, Community Voices Zimbabwe, Africa Media and Information Technology Initiative, AFRIMITI, Mozilla Foundation, Ozilando Africa Initiative, Namsiwe Digital, Africa Internet Rights Alliance, and of course, Paradigm Initiative. So we kicked off the country in-person sessions on April 20th in Namibia. That was hosted by the country partner Digital Foundation of Namibia, where the session brought together stakeholders in the digital space to engage in the matters relating to digital rights and inclusion, seek common solution, map strategies, and educate the public. And in that session, we were honored to have Emma Mutila Theophilus, who is the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Namibia, who officiated that event. On the 21st of April, it was Paradigm Initiative and partners, Media Alliance of Zimbabwe, MISA Zimbabwe, and the Digital Age Conservations in an intensive session interrogating Zimbabwe's digital rights and inclusion community on ways to shape a digital right respecting country. The session also unpacked children's rights in the digital age, internet access, and media freedoms, among other themes. On the from Zimbabwe, we moved to the Democratic Republic of Congo on the 22nd of April. The Congolese Institute of Human Rights hosted the DRC DRIF22 in-person session under the watchful eyes of Mr. Prosper So the session on digital rights on digital rights. Ghana. To effective policy implementation. After Ghana, Nigeria through Paradigm Initiative, in collaboration with our partners, Tech Hub, Keep It Real Foundation, Africa Channel Reporting Project, and Stand to End Rape Initiative, hosted the second two-day DRIF in-person event from April 27 to April 28. The session looked at the freedom of expression, gender inequality, among other thematics. The Nigerian session was equally used as an opportunity to introduce to the world Paradigm Initiative's new direction and implementation of its work in Africa. Digital inclusion program. The organization is now scaling the carefully drafted program models, resources, and technical know-how through partner organizations within the African continent to continue to carry on with the program's aims and objectives. The first set of partners to work with Paradigm Initiative in scaling the live leadership program in their respective locations and countries included Mentor and African Child Initiative, MESI, Startup KB, Show Age Development Initiative, Division Alive Foundation, Digicon Academy, Connecta, and Asikana Network. In Zambia, on the 29th of April, Mr. Kennedy Londa, the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Information and Media, the Republic of Zambia, opened the Zambia DRIF in-person session. So he highlighted the government's position and openness in forging concrete strategies to promote human rights online, and at the same time called on the measures to be more and self-regulatory in its opening night. That session, panel discussions found through impacts of social networking, looking at the 2021 general elections in Zambia and the role of the media in relaying balance and actual information, and the infringement of freedom of speech. So, and this event was organized by Parley Initiative. The Angola and Malawi DRIF22 session organized by our partners, Monaco and Society, were held respectively on the 5th of May. In Angola, Alfredo Capitomoro, one of the panelists, did a presentation on digital literacy and internet democratization, assessing the fact that connectivity in Angola remains a challenge and expensive, though the country has a good mobile phone penetration. Internet accessibility can be increased in Angola by improving the digital skills of people, especially the youth, while leveraging on government to provide the appropriate infrastructures. While in Malawi, on the other hand, saw a higher level panel discussion, public lectures and digital exhibition under the chairmanship of the Honorable Minister Gospel Kazako, the Minister of Information and Government spokesperson, who emphasized the need for equal access so that those marginalized, including youth and young women, are not left behind. The session equally deepened strategic dialogue and accountability among key stakeholders on internet access and interrogated the cost of being online in Malawi. On the 6th of May, we looked at the state of digital rights and inclusion in Cameroon in an engaging and interactive session where session experts, Avis Momeni, Secretary General of Protège QV, Sophie Ngassa of the Center for Youth Education and Economic Development, and participants touched the aspect of press freedom, human rights, digital rights, and inclusion in Cameroon, citing some very concrete examples in line with past and current events in the country. Our South Sudan partners, Connector Hub, on May 10th, brought together participants from different institutions, CSOs, media houses, universities, and policymakers, influencers in their respective communities or institution. The session unpacked the digital rights and inclusion challenges faced in South Sudan and Africa as a whole, while providing recommendations to forge the rights of online users. The Data Privacy Bill, Access to Information, Cybersecurity Bill, and ICT policies were examined by the guest speakers. In Tanzania, on the 11th of May, our partner and country host Zaina Foundation organized DRIF22 under its national team, Digital Rights and Inclusion for Sustainable Development in Tanzania, where discussion spanned through technology and people with disability, deliberated on the Electronic and Postal Communications Regulation of 2020, that's the EPOCA regulations, with emphasis on online content, amongst others. On the 12th of May in Dakar, Senegal, we looked at how sustainable and neutral how sustainable and neutral are ICT institutions in Senegal. Panelists presented a legal framework guiding digital rights in Senegal, and also uploading the government's role in providing technological infrastructure for an inclusive and digital vibrant community. But despite these advancements, lapses could be witnessed in the areas of inclusivity, especially with people with disabilities. And finally, in Kenya yesterday, May 19, at the premise of 4 Points Hotel Haligam, Paradigm Initiative welcomed digital rights stakeholders in a session that spotlighted youth empowerment in digital leadership in Kenya. Paradigm Initiative's Executive Director, Mr. Benga Sassan, gave a roadmap on Kenya's strides on digitalization, citing the ingenious M-Pesa innovation solution, but in line with data protection to freedom of expression and association, surveillance, Kenya must retrace its steps to remind other countries of what's possible when you focus on building instead of fighting imaginary enemies. And today we are here to draw the curtains of the 39 days of insightful and breathtaking DRIF22. And with this, permit me say, Asanteni, Asanteni san, kukua na sisi leo. Thanks very much. Okay, so we'll continue the program by calling on Nena, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Paradigm Initiative, to give us the way forward and the takeaways of DRIF22 and what we have planned for the future DRIF. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Nena Paul Ugochukwu of Paradigm Initiative. And I just wanted to start maybe by highlighting that we had over 500 virtual delegates at the 3-day virtual session. So it's more than 390. And DRIF22 so far has reached 1,000 people. So DRIF22 this year is happening against the backdrop of, the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. So as the proverbial dust settles, we're able to get a clearer picture of the impact of, lack of access to digital technologies and the infringement of digital rights violations during that period. So we examine country perspectives on different themes, from digital inclusion to digital rights violation, disability rights, data protection, and so on and so forth. So I will just try to briefly summarize, like Valerie said, 39 days of deliberations and what the takeaways were. So with digital inclusion, we delved into country perspectives and challenges, including poor infrastructure, as has been highlighted by some of the Londa country researchers, weak infrastructure when it comes to internet and also power. So even when people have access to internet and data devices, there's lack of power to actually use them or make meaningful use of them. The low internet penetration rates and high cost of devices and data across countries on the continent. There's also a lack of prioritization of digital literacy programs, as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. So countries had, acceleration plans of going online to facilitate education and children's learning. But because of the absence of digital literacy, these populations and communities were unable to use the devices or to make use of the internet for the purposes that they're there for. So education policies therefore must prioritize digital literacy. We also spotlighted disability rights. This was a common theme through the session, starting with the opening keynotes by Commissioner Lawrence Mute. And the conversations highlighted the need to prioritize inclusion of persons with disabilities in the digital ecosystem, from governance, mass media, digital innovations, and very importantly, design of technologies. We will further exclude and segment communities if we continue treating the needs of persons with disabilities as an afterthought, as was demonstrated from the debates that were held in the sessions. There's also a lack of frameworks and policies that protect the rights of persons with disabilities online. In the same vein, we also examined women's rights. women remain underrepresented and excluded in digital spaces. There's more information about that, more recent information for the past year in Londa 21. And this is due to some cultural practices, gender-based violence, online and offline, and the economic wherewithal for women to access the internet. We also examined children's rights in the digital age. Children are increasingly making use of the internet, so we need to understand their rights, prioritize protecting their rights in digital spaces. As highlighted by the country researchers for Londa, in the past year, there was clampdown on free speech, there were disruptions and shutdown of the internet. In Nigeria, we had the Twitter ban. And during those conversations at DRIF22, we were able to examine the impact this had on the civic space and in the real lives, daily lives of Africans. Some of the common themes we also looked at under digital rights violations were misinformation and content moderation and data protection. Those three seem to be at the very forefront of discussions at every session that we had. So especially with misinformation and content moderation, misinformation is a very complex issue, and I think it deserves intentionality, positive intentionality, because you can be intentional to do the wrong thing. The sessions also, the debates also highlighted that legislation is pretty short-sighted when it comes to dealing with misinformation. It's not a one-stop solution. We have to take into consideration context and realities and nuances. I think in one of the sessions, Binga Shison, I think it was in Ethiopia, highlighted, the debates between freedom and security. We can have both. It can be one or the other. Also at the sessions, as Paradigm Initiative, we were able to share some tools, because even though, duty bearers have the responsibility to enforce protection of rights, we also have individual and personal responsibilities. So we shared some tools on how we can educate ourselves and each other and raise awareness on digital rights and inclusion issues, which is with the Londa Report, and how we can report digital violations using the Reportee platform. I believe it's a civic responsibility. If you see a crime happening offline, maybe you see a theft, you will call the police. So if there are digital rights infringements online, we should also be able to report those. So we have a platform, Reportee.Africa, where you can do that. And then we also shared a digital security toolkit, IETA, that every African can use to keep themselves safe online. So with those themes in mind, some of the recommendations and ways forward, that were strategized and developed were the need to build and strengthen partnerships, which DRIF facilitated with networking at all the sessions, engaging national human rights institutions, governments and government agencies, promoting multi-sectoral collaborations. We heard some success stories of the enactment of legislation in different countries due to cross sections of stakeholders coming together to push advocacy and the agenda forward. And we also learned that we have to platform unheard voices. So persons with disabilities, underserved communities, women and children. No one understands the realities better than those living that reality. So we need to listen to them, give them the platform and amplify their voices. We also need to create awareness on digital rights among policy developers. So from education, people who are not necessarily, who don't necessarily understand the digital landscape, we need to educate them so that they are able to devise and develop policies that adequately address digital issues. As a priority, governments need to prioritize infrastructure development as a public service. The internet is no longer a luxury; it is a need. COVID-19 has demonstrated that quite well. We need to prioritize media literacy, awareness on misinformation, educate people on fact checking as well. We discussed the impact of misinformation and content moderation, and when it comes to activities such as elections and other political activities and happenings on the continent. Relevant agencies and duty bearers have to commit to developing and enacting legislations that guarantee digital freedoms. They can do this by ratifying and domesticating relevant international treaties, such as the Malabo Convention. And where we have laws that are already enacted, such as recently in Zambia, they must be enforced. And where agencies are established, such as data protection authorities, they must be independent and their authority must also be enforced. At Paradigm Initiative, we're going to continue sub-regional and country level work and advocacy and engagements with our partners. And we invite all concerned citizens, because it's not just the purview of online users or online activists. The world, we're in a digital age, so this is a call for everyone, all citizens, to be concerned about digital rights and digital inclusion in your countries and in the continent as a whole. So those were the takeaways from DRIF22. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nena, for the very insightful information we are receiving, and really insightful and not surprising at all to know that misinformation is taking center stage in all the discussions you've had so far. And I mean, this is definitely and obviously a call for all of us to take this very seriously and involve ourselves even more. I want to also recognize the members of the Fourth Estate watching us from across Africa online. And should you have any questions, just feel free to use the Q&A feature online, and we'll be able to treat them. For now, members of the Fourth Estate who are with us here, should you have any questions, the floor is now open for any questions you might have, and yeah, feel free to just ask any questions. You may introduce your name, your media house, and where you're from.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead. Naftali Mora is my name. I'm Kenyan, but working for Shinwan using Chinese state media. I just want to Bekile, please, can you paint for us a picture of the digital inclusivity in the continent? And of course, breaking it in terms of region, because we have 44 countries. We have North Africa, we have West, East, South. And in terms of like, where are we progressing and where are we backsliding? And the future outlook.
Thank you so much. That is such a loaded question, right? But I'll try and paint a picture. If I have a paintbrush, first of all, I'll choose the color red. When we're talking about digital inclusion on the continent, generally across the board, we find that there are a lot of marginalized communities, and specifically in the rural areas. And we've also got disparities when we're looking at the urban areas. We've also got low-income families and households that also don't have access to digital technologies. So you find that, as already mentioned by Nena, during the pandemic, it kind of elaborated on these gaps. So we find that in most African countries across the board, there were definitely communities that were excluded. And when we're looking at assistive devices for persons with disabilities, that's also a huge area, a huge gap. So again, you'd find that the color red again will be dotted when we're looking at the picture, when we're looking at inclusion. So you find that persons with disabilities as well, across the continent. I'm not going to favor one specific country and say, where you're leading me to in terms of who is doing great. I will just paint it red and say that there's an urgent need for, African governments to prioritize this as a matter of urgency, because we find that, without, access to digital technologies, people don't have access to information. People are not able to meaningfully protect their fundamental rights and freedoms. And you find that as well, the African Commission has also, elaborated on this to say that, there is need for states to prioritize digital inclusion, especially perspective of marginalized communities. You find this, of course, in the African Commission on Human and People's Rights Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information. So it's not just a conversation we're having as Paradigm Initiative, but at that level, at a regional level, you find that the paintbrush red has already, been cast across the whole continent. So I think for me, that would be my response to your question. And of course, we are going forward. So spotlighting the future, I think where we are going, we need to go to a place where we include people. We don't leave anyone behind. I think this is the mantra. Even when we saw the pandemic, we're talking about leave no one behind. In marginalized communities, leave no children behind when we're looking at the right to education. And the pandemic has specifically, again, highlighted the importance of everyone having access to digital technologies, and not just that. Digital literacy has already been highlighted. You find that we still have gaps with that regard. And as Paradigm Initiative as well, together with most of our partners in the space, we are doing our best to also raise awareness on these issues so that we have meaningfully people engaging on digital platforms, because this is very pertinent and a matter of agency. So I hope that in the coming years, states will be able to comply to the call from the African Commission, to comply as well to the call of civil society, to bridge that gap through infrastructure development, through increasing internet penetration, and all the gaps that we're spotlighting, especially with Londa, as well as the discussions that arose from the forum itself. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thobekile. Taking any other questions that you may have? Yes, sure.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Dongo. I work for a business magazine called SME Today. I'll just start by thanking you. The session was quite informative. My observation is that you haven't mentioned Uganda and South Africa. I hope people will go there in the next forum. Then I'm also, we don't have a researcher from Kenya. I hope you have gathered information on the issues we face, especially the ordinary citizen. When you go to many places, government offices, many institutions, you are required to give your ID number and your phone number, and you are not even sure this data will be used the right way in future. So sometimes you get people calling you on your phone. They already have your details, so we are not sure that our data is well protected. Then the gentleman from DRC has mentioned about the need for telcos to follow standards, but most of the telcos are very rich, so they are also able to go around adhering to standards and protecting data. So I hope some of these issues can be addressed in future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Just for the members of the Fourth Estate watching us online, this is a reminder that you can use the French translation to be able to listen to one of our panelists here in French. So feel free to utilize the French feature if you're watching us and joining us online. Thank you. Over to you, Nena.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. So I just wanted to respond that we have reports on Uganda and South Africa touching on these issues in the Londa reports for 2021. You raised a pertinent issue about digital IDs, and those were some of the themes we discussed during DRIF, especially when it comes to personal data privacy and personal data protection, and what mechanisms are in place. So we have the Malabo Convention, which as CSOs and with other stakeholders, we're working to push countries and governments to ratify, to ensure that institutions and governments and private organizations, when it comes to processing personal data, that they do it within the framework that respects freedoms and rights of people. So just wanted to highlight that information is available more detailed in Londa. Thank you.
Okay, we have some few minutes for questions. Over to you, Nick.
So my name is Nick Kanali from Tech Trends, and my question, I was just going through the report, and I see there's a page that focuses on around 22 countries. So my question would be, Of course, maybe the three countries are really commonly known, for example, things like internet shutdown and all that. But why are there 22 countries, I think, that the report focuses on? Then in terms of collaborations, like locally, I know we have bodies like the Bloggers Association of Kenya that does a lot of things around, digital rights and all that. So are you looking to work with the local partners as well to basically just push the entire agenda? So it's about collaborations, yeah? So are you in any way looking to work with the local partners to basically push whatever you are doing, especially in terms of internet rights and digital rights and all that?
Okay, I'll take the last question and I'll pass to Tobekile for the first one about the Londa report and the 22 countries. So yes, we work with local partners in not just in the 6 countries where we operate. Paradigm Initiative operates in Nigeria, Senegal, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, and Kenya. But we also, like with DRIF, you can see in 17 countries, we work with multiple partners across the continent. And we're always seeking partnerships and collaborations because we believe that this work and the advocacy needs cross-sectoral collaboration, local partners, foot soldiers on the ground that understand the local contexts of these issues, because what obtains in Nigeria might not be what obtains in Uganda, for example. So yes, we do collaborate and we have numerous partnerships across stakeholders, from private organizations to government agencies to other civil society organizations and concerned individuals, so even informal associations as well. We work together. We're always open to listen, to strategize, and to develop action plans that we can implement in furthering digital rights and digital inclusion in Africa. So,
thank you so much. And I think the way I understood your question is that you're trying to understand why this specific 22 countries, right? So basically what we do is we collaborate with partners across the continent and we invite our partners to draft reports. And for this particular year, we chose specifically to focus on 22 countries. We would love to cover the whole continent. I believe that's where you probably are going with this, and we take up the challenge any time of day. And going forward, I think in the future, we'll look forward to covering a lot more countries. I think for Londa 2020, we covered less countries, and we were deliberate also about making sure that the countries that we covered in 2020, we kind of also covered them in 2021, so that we're able to assess the trends, assess the developments, whether there's any progress in terms of respecting digital rights and inclusion. So we're kind of deliberate about maintaining the same countries. For 2019, we had even less countries, so we are progressing. So if you follow us, you'll see that where we reported on, for instance, 13 countries, we progressed to 19 and we progressed to 22 countries. So you'd find that we are moving forward. So onwards ever, we are looking forward. So do look forward to more reports being covered in the coming years. And it would be nice to say we've covered 54 or 55 countries in Africa. So I don't know. So keep following us, who knows?
Thank you so much, Tobekile. I'm meant to understand we have one member of the press online, Peter Oluka, if you can hear me from online. You raised your hand, so feel free to ask your question now, if you can hear us. Peter, if you're online and you can hear us, the floor is yours. Peter, you may feel free to unmute. We can proceed if we have any other questions as we wait for Peter to unmute. Okay.
My name is David Indaje, and my question is on digital inclusion. There have been issues around not just infrastructure, but issue around also sustainability and the cost and the environment around where these particular issues are being addressed. And I would like to know if the report responds to such perspectives, because for instance, like in Kenyan perspective, we have the Communications Authority who does the Universal Service Fund. They have a new strategic plan which states that they're just not going to do infrastructure alone, but they are also going to look at other salient issues that pertains to the same issues to do with cost access of the devices, because you can have the infrastructure in place, you don't have the devices. So what is the sustainability to that? That is a government entity, but what about the private players who are also trying to do the same initiative at place? So I would like to know if the report covers these unique challenges in terms of just advancing this access.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is yeah, very important reflection there that you bring by this discussion. Our view is that we must look at ICT even if the internet as permanent infrastructure for development. That's the way we have invested in roads as an infrastructure. That's how ICT should work. We should also look at ICT as an economic investment. So that's where the sustainability is coming in. So I'll give an example for Malawi, the recent World Bank report. The recent World Bank report shows that Malawi is losing about 189 million US dollars in GDP every year because of the lack of infrastructure. What that tells you is that if we invest in ICT, we are also boosting the economy. So ICT investment should not be seen as consumption, but as an investment. That's where the sustainability of the future of ICT is. So when governments look at investment in ICT, it's more about economic development. It's about growing the GDP. It's about creating jobs. We're not talking about creating jobs online. You're talking about the digital economy. So it's far from the consumption perspective or narrative that we're looking at. That maybe government is going to spend more and then it's going to drain more resources. In fact, it's going to generate more. And by generating more, that's where the sustainability lies. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Not sure if Peter is able to join online, but if not, should there be any
Hello,
other
I'm
question?
here. Can you hear me? Hello, I'm here.
Yes,
Yes, Peter.
we can hear you. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Yeah, good morning. I was trying to type my questions, but let me just drop it here. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to PIN and to members of this initiative. Everyone who is involved is trying to save a soul, save a life, or save the economy, or save the continent. Then my question is, on the side of the citizens, what are we doing to educate them? Because sometimes the actions of the citizens give government the leverage to a kind of come up with policies that that go against digital rights. I'll give you an instance. In Nigeria, a few days ago, the Minister of Information came up and saying that they're going to, kind of tell Facebook what to do. They should bring down some certain comments and rest of them. So, but I believe that it's education. Benga will tell you the fight him and the team did at National Assembly in Nigeria a few years ago about when the policy was about to be introduced to clamp down on Facebook and rest of them. They went to National Assembly and fought that fight. But now, with the actions of the citizens, sometimes governments lash on it and try to come up with policy. So what are you going to do in terms of educating the citizens on what to post and what to do sometimes, not to give government the leverage? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Okay.
Thank you. So maybe to go back a little bit, actually, what citizens are can do, but also what are we giving them the potential and giving them the tools actually to use. So I'll go back on a section that is mentioned in the Tunisia Report, for instance, on the right to access information. So now I'm in a room full with journalists. So I think that's one right that you use frequently in your work. But let's not forget that the real potential and the real power of that right is to actually inform the citizens and have them in a way get engaged in the public policies debate, but also in all matters about their own lives, from economic, social, political, etc. So one thing that happened in Tunisia, as I said, there were a law that was adopted around 5 years ago. It's not perfect, but it's good to as something to establish on. But the thing is, are citizens aware of that law and of their right to actually go ahead and ask for certain information, certain data, actually maybe flag it out when the information is not provided in websites or is not updated? So that's one thing that I would say that is lacking when we don't look into how to implement, how to empower actually citizens to use their rights, but also to use the legal frameworks available for them. So in the case of Tunisia, we saw that journalists, just like you all, started flagging that the flaws in the law, but also in the practices when it comes to governmental agencies, and in a way that was also related to the COVID pandemic, because people wanted to know actually how many beds do we have in certain hospitals, about the disparity between hospitals according to regions, etc. And they don't have to go to that place actually to know the information or know what strategies are being implemented. So when it started first by journalists saying, hi, we actually went through the legal process, we submitted requests, we didn't get answers, we want answers to go into and push for articles, etc. And from there were campaigns online asking and putting pressure on governmental agencies to move forward in that. We also saw it when the Ministry of Health in Tunisia, for instance, issued a statement asking doctors during the pandemic, and let's say in the second wave of the pandemic that was quite harsh, asking them not to give statements to the media and not to publish also online, on their social media information without going back to, let's say, their higher management, etc. And that statement was faced with a huge pushback from civil society, but also from online users saying, okay, actually, if you are not saying the full truth, we would love for our doctors and our health workers to inform us if there are any flaws. And this is a crisis where, as citizens, we need information, not only to know the information because that's our right, but also to push for better practices from our own co-citizens. So in a way, if you want us to have certain barriers, if you want us to accept certain exceptional measures, we need the information. So that's one case, I think, where we can see how citizens are pushing, and specifically online users can be actually triggers to push for sometimes government when they make a wrong statement, or let's say a statement that is hindering certain rights, to push back and actually allow them to access their rights in a reliable but also diverse matters.
Thank you so much for treating Peter's question online. Just as we are wrapping up, should there be one last question? I'm just waiting to see whether there's any other online media seeking to ask questions. But if not, I think we'll almost be wrapping up. And I actually have a question around women. I think one of the panelists mentioned that women are lagging behind when it comes to this, and that they mentioned dip, but what can be done across Africa and specifically Kenya to, equalize the numbers from our digital rights inclusion?
Okay, I'm going to address the rest of the continent when we're looking at women's rights online and how women can get more access online. So I think there's need for a deliberate focus on ensuring that women have access to digital technologies from the government. So this is literally looking at government policies, looking at government budgets to see how they promote ICTs, and not just ICTs in general, but also to specifically focus on marginalized groups, vulnerable groups as well, but to specifically look at how to advance women's access to ICTs in the budgetary allocations towards ICT growth. So that is one key recommendation. One other recommendation as well is to create an enabling environment on the internet so that women don't have to self-censor or disappear from being online because of things like cyberbullying, harassment, and things like that. Because these are some of the issues that take women out of the online space, and not just women in general. We look at women as a term, but you find that within that term, you find that women, we can break down women to women who are in politics, women who are journalists. You find that they actually bear the brunt the most. We can even look at the intersectionalities between, just being a woman and also being a person with a disability. You find that you are in double jeopardy. You don't have access to digital technologies because you are a person with a disability and a woman with a disability, and you are also excluded from being online. So we want a shift in policy. We want a shift as well, in implementation of policy and the protection mechanisms that are there at national level. So you find that when you're looking at online gender-based violence, for instance, the security sector needs to be aware that there's such things going on. And you find that in most African countries, having also, done research on online gender-based violence affecting women, one of the key things that I've also, discovered is that you find that the security sector, they are not aware that women have digital rights. When a woman goes to, for instance, to a police station and reports that they've been cyberbullied, the police don't have, the agency to deal with the matter is a serious issue. And sometimes the legislative frameworks are falling short of offering protection for women, especially when we're looking at women's rights online. So I think those are some of the areas of improvement when we're looking at addressing the key concerns that arise when we're looking at women's rights online. And these are some of the key recommendations as well that are arising out of the Londa report, and not just addressing Kenyan issues, but also across the board.
Noel, if you can hear us, you raised your hand online. Let's just give him a couple of seconds. Noel, once again, if you can hear us, the floor is yours. If not, feel free to drop your question on the Q&A feature, and we'll be sure to give the panelists after the press conference, and we'll find a way of having that answered. But based off, the many questions from the members of the Fourth Estate, this has obviously been a thought-provoking discussion, an insightful report that has been unveiled, and obviously worth thinking about and seeking ways to involve ourselves as individuals in these insightful discussions, and how we're going to move forward in terms of inclusion of digital rights for Kenyans and for Africans as a whole. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Benga I hope I pronounced the name correct. Mr. Benga, over to you for a vote of thanks and a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess the job is done. And apart from Somalia, which obviously was postponed because of the elections, I'm sure everyone is waiting for the outcome for the peaceful transition in that country. But apart from that, this officially marks the end of DRIF22, the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum. This is the 9th edition, started in 2013. And of course, I'm glad to let you know that the 10th edition, and they also say that the 10th is always the big one, right? So the big one is April 12 to 14, 2023. Feel free to start using the hashtags already, DRIF23. We'll have April 12 to 14, and that will be followed by in-country sessions in 3 more countries. So instead of 17 countries now, we'll have 20 countries between April 17 and May 26, 2023. It's not too early to mark your calendars so that you can follow that. Why we host DRIF is to have conversations around these topics that we've discussed this morning into this afternoon. But what we do with Londa is to make sure that we capture all these conversations, that we don't just talk and go. I know that they say that there's a lot of talking around, but DRIF is not just about talking. The things we talk about at DRIF are the things that go into Londa. This beautiful 236-page report is available and will be available online on PIN's website later today for people to download and read. It's already available. Okay, great. So paradigmhq.org/Londa, Londa, and you can download and read the report. The English version is available. The French and Swahili versions will follow. And as we do every year, as we've done for the last 3 years, we will produce a short film. And I'm sure that will be of interest for many of us. We'll produce a short film. 2 years ago, we produced a short film based on the 2019 report. It was called Training Day. In 2020, we produced a short film called Focus. And I have no idea what the title of the film for 2022 will be called, but I am sure that it will be as interesting, if not more interesting, than the previous report. But apart from just documenting, what we also ensure to do, and I'm sure Nena mentioned that, is that we make sure that when you get informed about what the issues are, it doesn't stop there. You can go ahead and protect yourself using our IETA toolkit, and you can go ahead and report the violations using Reporty. So I guess at this point, I just need to say a few thank yous. My thank you obviously will start with the PIN team, the Paradigm Initiative team. And the reason is very obvious. If you are going to get a DRIF23, then I need to thank them at least for what has happened with DRIF22. Thobekile, who you've listened to a lot today, is our community manager, and she's the one who leads the process for our Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum. So I think it's actually a very good time to, on behalf of myself personally and everyone else, to say thank you to Thobekile. It's okay to clap. I saw some hands coming together. And as she will always be quick to say, it's not just her, it's every member of the Paradigm Initiative team. But I want to single someone out today because it is birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to... Inka is very shy. He's the man behind the computers. But today I'm going to force you to stand and dance. Inka, please stand. It's your birthday. It's not every time your birthday falls on the last day. So happy birthday. I'll see him for the venue of the birthday party after now. Inka, and to every member of our team, Khadija is right there. Kenneth is right there. By the way, Kenneth is responsible for this beautiful design. So thank you, Kenneth. I thought I loved the cover, and then I saw the back, and of course, I'm sure you've all met Valerie, who is also a member of our team. But it's not just the PIN team that does this, as you can imagine. We do this, we host a forum with country partners. We would never be in 17 countries if it was just, the members of our team. It would be literally impossible. Coincidentally, some of the members of that particular group who are country partners with us are also authors and researchers for the country report. So I guess that circle we have, of course, from Malawi, you met Charles earlier. Charles is both the head of a country partner organization and also a researcher for the report. So I'm using you as the point of contact to all researchers and country partners. And of course, you've had a chance to listen to insights from Tunisia and also from DRC here today. So thank you to our country partners and Londa researchers. And of course, also the editorial team. That's the team that makes sure that even though the researchers have done a lot of work, that, there's a general oversight provided to make sure that, what you read is accurate. And as chair of that editorial team, if you find any error, please hold me alone responsible. The researchers and the Bekele and the rest of them are responsible for the good things that are in the report. You can hold me responsible for any naughty error or printers error that you find. Our sponsors, it takes money to do the things that we do. Would like to say a very big thank you to them. I've listed this alphabetically because I know usually when you mention a name first, people think that's the person that gave you the most money. Ford Foundation, it's because it starts with F. So thank you to Ford Foundation, who have been very, very, long-term partners of PIN for all the work that we do. A big thank you also to Luminate. Luminate is our partner for this forum. The Netherlands government, the Netherlands Human Rights Fund is also a major contributor to this forum and our work generally. Omidyar Network, which Omidyar is no stranger to Kenya in particular, because some of their groundbreaking work has also been done here. Open Society Foundations. And I'm sure you used to know Osiwa for West Africa, Osia for East Africa, Osisa, but they no longer exist in those names. They are now Open Society Found, OSF Africa. So a big thank you to OSF Africa. Also to the United States government through the State Department, the Bureau for Democracy, Rights and Labor. And last but not the least, Wikimedia Foundation, who are partners for this forum. I love my job and I want to keep my job. So I'm going to say a big thank you to my bosses, the board of Parley Initiative, for providing governance oversight and also making sure that we get all the support that we need. My last thanks for the day goes to you. There's a reason you're called the fourth estate of the realm, the only other officially recognized group after the executive, judiciary, and the legislature. All we do will be as good as winking in the dark if you do not help, shed light on the work that we do. So I'm thanking you because I know that as we live here, we will read from all the way from Algeria to Zimbabwe. We will read all of the reports of the things we've discussed here today, thanks to you. And so thank you very much for coming, for listening to us. And I guess this is a good point to say Asante Sana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Benga. We have marked the end of this conference, and I do want to once again thank the members of the Fourth Estate for joining. I believe it's been a lot of insightful discussions. We have photographers as part of the members of the press who would want to, do a pictorial with the parties. So he will